Delighted to say Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, joins us throughout for all the chat and, of course, your calls as well. Morning to you once again, Philip.
Good morning.
I mean, where do we start? Free school meals. You and I have had a right old rant about this already. I mean, again, the average cost of a school meal at lunch in the last year is £2.65 a day, so it's £13.25 a week, adds up 39 weeks a year, £516 a year. So Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, has been doing the media round today saying it's another £500 in parents' pockets that they've got to spend on other things if money is tight. But the fact that they're expanding it from not just people who are on incomes of less than £7,400, which is, yes, a very low income, bearing in mind that won't include your housing benefit and numerous other benefits. It really won't. But you're talking about people who are really, really low incomes, a level that's not changed since 2018, so it's not gone up with inflation, so that really is worth a lot less than it used to be. But from autumn next year, 2026, if your parents have got universal credit, sort of automatically you will be eligible for free school meals. So there is an element there. There'll be a load of kids whose parents haven't been claiming it, didn't know they could claim it, too proud to claim it, too chaotic and hopeless don't care to claim it. A lot of kids who are on incomes just above that, whose parents are really struggling, they'll get those free school meals. My issue, and I know that you share a lot of my concerns, is why on earth are kids whose parents can quite easily afford free school meals getting free school meals on the taxpayer? Other taxpayers who are struggling as well, who are paying for their kids, aren't getting it. But also, crucially, for me, I don't think it's a good idea that the state just keeps taking over more and more of the job of the parent. Free breakfast clubs, free lunch. Why don't we just leave them at school for dinner now? Why don't we get the schools and the state to clothe our children as well? Maybe keep them at weekends. At what point do we say this is a responsibility of a parent? And if a parent isn't feeding their kid adequately and not able to provide for them, maybe we should be talking about other solutions.
Well, yes, and you forgot about teeth cleaning classes when they come in. So what are parents doing? And we heard from some fantastic callers who turned around and said they went without food so that their kids would get fed.
That was Stuart. But we also heard from Sam. She was a retired head teacher, and she talked about the kids who they had to feed because when they call social services saying these kids aren't being fed, they don't care. And
there are some people who really do deserve support, and they tend to be the ones that fall through the cracks. A lot of people in universal credit keep themselves in universal credit, and they will only work part-time up to the set number of hours, so they don't upset the universal credit. They could work and earn more.
No, you're not allowed to say this, because this can't possibly be true, because that would imply that people make really rational choices, that earning an extra 10 or 20 quid a week in terms of actually going out to work for those extra 3 days, as opposed to the 2 you do to get onto all these benefits, that they would be worth their while. Because you and I would think we'd do that because it'd be a future life. No, for an awful lot of people, if you're going to be on minimum wage the rest of your life and a job you hate, why on earth would you go out to work for that extra money when you could be on universal credit? When we talk about the working poor, we're actually often, a lot of the time, talking about people who are choosing not to do full-time work. Or you hear these people go, oh, she works 3 jobs. Yeah, like one of them is 1 day a week, one of them's 3 hours a day. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, you know, and no, I don't just rack up for 3 hours a day.
The way the benefit system is structured, it forces people into a position where economically they can't work over a certain number of hours, because it would take them then an almost exponential number of hours to get what they're getting free.
So they stick to the 16 hours, then I think it's raised to 24. But there are massive, and Fraser Nelson, ex of The Spectator, now of The Times, did a fantastic documentary about this, exposing what happens with incapacity, sickness benefits and how people are pushed onto those. There's definitely a massive issue there. We don't want kids to suffer because the parents are just lazy, feckless, useless, goodness knows what. But as the head teacher who you spoke to earlier pointed out, and so many experts I've spoken to over the years have said to me, there are just so many parents who don't do the right thing for their kids. They don't feed them. They don't feed them anything. They have to scrounge around for stuff. If they do get food, it's a plate of chips. It's from the local takeaway. They're sitting there with their fags and their can of lager and some weed. Who are we kidding? And their laptop open watching, on gambling, but they haven't got money to feed their kids. But the solution there isn't to feed the child. The solution there is to get the child out of that home, isn't it?
Exactly. Isn't
that the solution?
It's to do that. It's to change the benefit system. It's not to throw more cash at what they're going to then plug as a vote winner in by-elections and everything else.
I don't think those people vote, by the way.
Well, they might vote, but
those are people who wouldn't even know who the Prime Minister is.
But it'll be seen by others as they're doing good, and therefore it'll get those that want to vote for them. They're
but
doing
no
this
child is living in poverty in this country unless something is going horribly
No.
wrong. And in each case,
there'll be a small minority.
There is a small again. And
really
again, we look at the problems when we see people and they go on to benefits and that absurd 5-week wait. Most people who are earning full time don't have 5 weeks income sitting in their bank account in savings. People on high incomes don't have that sort of money, let alone people who are living hand to mouth. And I've always thought that was a massive issue with universal credit. But people who end up at food banks, again, I've got a friend who works at the Bedport office. She used to give out the vouchers for the food banks. Look at some of the people are in dire need, but they're in dire need because they're waiting for benefits. Women who've left abusive partners and the like with the kids. We need to be making sure those people get all the help they need to set themselves up again. But at the end of the day, and there are people who are on disability and incapacity benefits and whatever they're called this week, who are really struggling financially, and we need to make sure those kids are helped and they're helped. But if the answer is that they haven't got enough money to pay for the school lunches, surely we just need to make sure their benefits are higher. If we want to be a civilised society, what we're admitting here is that there are some parents who are just too darn lazy, feckless, heartless to look after their kids properly. We need to deal with that.
Well, and it also creates this gimme, gimme, gimme society. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to take responsibility. Society's going to do it for me. Well, that's not how life works.
Well, it shouldn't be. And the more we do...
Well, the kids will grow up in that environment. And that doesn't then set them life lessons right. And therefore they will perpetuate it.
Now, listen,
we have to stop this.
We talk about immigration an awful lot, do we not? And there's various stories about that. We discussed them in the last hour. I think we can do this quite briefly because I'm just going to ask you a straightforward question. Keir Starmer is planning a crackdown on migrants exploiting the right to family life under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. They're talking about the French are going to intercept migrant boats for the first time, changing the rules on that. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is looking at reviving a Rwanda-style scheme, but also looking at a review into whether we stay in the European Convention of Human Rights. Will any of these things, A, happen, and B, change anything?
No.
Moving on.
No, there is a positive story here for the government. Keir has smashed a gang.
What?
Keir has smashed a gang.
Really?
It was on the BBC 2 days ago.
I did see this.
And it's a gang of Botswanans people smugglers. So the whole problem is going to be solved. They have smuggled a grand total of 200 people into the country.
200 people is still quite a lot.
Well, that's
only 4 boats.
That's less than 20% of what comes in on a daily basis at the moment.
Yeah, this is a fair point. I just think, do you know what? I think whatever the government announces on this, and I think actually whatever even Kemi Badenoch announces on this as Tory leader, I just don't think any of it's going to wash with anyone at all. People are not going to believe or trust anything from any of the two major parties until action is seen. You're going to actually have to see those numbers come massively down. You're going to have to see interceptions. We're going to have to see it in the Channel. We're going to have to see the courts not letting foreign criminals who are paedophiles and murderers and rapists stay in the country. Yeah,
there's a simple answer. Someone comes in and across the beaches, they go into a holding camp. That holding camp, they then bust to the airport and they're taken off somewhere else. Oh, like Rwanda. Or wherever is
Works
next.
Works for me. Let's talk about someone dealing with things in a rather different way in terms of unwanted people coming in to the country. Donald Trump, he's followed a policy which he actually carried out in 2017, much to the horror of everybody. But he banned people from Muslim countries. Yeah, I mean, it was a blatantly, openly... anti-Muslim policy. This time round, been a bit more thinking through. But Donald Trump has signed a new travel ban targeting 12 countries. This is following in particular, I mean, it was obviously long planned, but a terror attack in Colorado by a man who'd arrived from Egypt and was not supposed to be in the country. He'd overstayed a visa and he committed a blatant anti-Semitic terror attack. And again, hey, the media keep reporting on a pro-Israeli demonstration. It wasn't. It was a rally for freeing the hostages.
Yep.
That's not the same thing, guys. Yep. But the ban targets the nationals of Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. And it's going to take in effect on June the 9th. I mean, I'd add to that probably Pakistan, probably Bangladesh as well, quite a few other countries. But those are basically the basket case countries he has talked about before. There's a partial ban placed on travellers from 7 more countries: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela. And he's basically saying these are countries where... not some are predominantly Muslim, not all of them are though, but basically said we will not let what happened in Europe happen in America, where we have seen mass migration to this country. I don't know about you. I'm thinking we should follow suit.
Yep, sounds fair to me. And he's put an exemption in there for those that are sports individuals travelling for either the World Cup or the Olympics. So he's not impacting those. However, I think that's fair. We should be doing the same. And
there are some countries for which we have particular problems. Yeah. If you look at the criminal records, the rate of crime from different nationals of different countries, I think pretty much all of those countries on that main list are the countries that we also have a problem with, where the crime rate is off the scale compared to Brits and indeed migrants from, say, America or France.
Yeah. And I'd add countries that we've got sanctions out against as well. So Russia, ban Russians from coming in. That would cause a bit of a stir in places.
I thought we did anyway, no?
No, there's still people in Russian passports are moving around.
Oh, I think they arrive via third countries, don't they?
Different routes,
yes,
and all the rest.
Yeah, we should have a better system
but
of that.
But of course, Donald Trump cites the incident that happened in the United States with the Egyptian national. Egypt isn't on the list.
Yes, but he's considering Egypt.
Yeah.
So obviously this is something that was planned more. But there is an argument to say, look, and the argument is not like, we don't like people from this country. We cannot vet the people. There are too many security lapses. There are too many people who could pose a threat, who pose an issue, criminally or terrorist-wise. We cannot vet these people. These are not functioning countries with decent systems where there is horrific levels of corruption and the like. So we're not going to allow people to come until unless or until we can sort things out. I think an awful lot of British people would support that.
Yeah. I think it's fair. I think we should follow suit. Donald Trump every now and again comes up with something that is quite sensible. Not very often. But
people will say, and it'll be challenged in the courts and they may well win, that, you can't just ban people as a whole. But we do that all the time. You have visa restrictions. I need a visa to go into certain countries or not certain countries. Yeah. I mean, this is the norm. Yeah. You don't have a right to go to any country in the world that you want.
Exactly. It's a privilege to get into the country. And when you read the rest of Donald Trump's statement, there are exemptions. So if people are fleeing because of persecution, if they're religious minorities, if there's conflict, and they can prove that, they can still apply for asylum and come in that way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? Let's also just talk. I've just got to do this too. I love the fact that when I raised this with you before the show, you looked at me in absolute sort of perplexed. What are you talking about? Harry and Meghan. For no good reason at all, other than the fact that it's their daughter Lilibet's 4th birthday. They've put out some pictures of Meghan with their daughter. You never see her face properly, but that's their choice. Got no issue with them doing that. They want privacy for their kids, the safety of their kids, got no issue. But they also decided, for some bizarre reason, put out a video of them sort of twerking and doing a dance, sort of TikTok-style dance, in a delivery suite in a hospital when their daughter was a week overdue. My daughter was overdue. Don't remember filming a video. I remember being in labour then, going into labour. But I don't understand why she's in a delivery suite if her baby's, if she's not in labour. I find that a bit weird. But also, you've done a video. Oh, fine, you want to pass the time and do a video. I mean, do what you want. Fill your boots. I don't care. Some good dancing there, But why would you put out such a private, intimate thing? They put out in their Netflix series, for which they got paid millions, they put out a video after he just proposed of this moment. For people who claim they wanted privacy, for people he's constantly suing the media about intrusions into his privacy, and yet he and she intrude on their own privacy, their own most intimate couple and family moments, whenever it feels like it's useful for publicity. I'm sort of repulsed by this.
I don't really care.
I mean, he has a fair point.
Yeah, I really,
they can do what they want.
It's not easy. They can do what they want. They're showing hypocrisy by trying to sue everyone for for a private life, and then they're putting their private life out.
I have the right to intrude on my own privacy, but you don't have the right to intrude on my privacy.
But also you've got the right within your own privacy to release things that are private about you at a time and place of your choosing, rather than someone else coming in and stealing it. So they can do that.
They have the right to. I'm just saying that when you talk about you want privacy, you don't want to be doing anything. You don't want to be in the public eye, and you constantly sell your soul, your marriage, your family life, your home life, and your children's birth. I don't know. I've got such a big issue with celebrities, which is all they are now.
Yeah.
I always said this from the day she was in, and everyone said, "Oh, she's a breath of fresh air." So and I said no, because she thinks she understands celebrity, not royal life. Now he understands both, but he's now in the celebrity world. When you're a royal, the whole point of royals is it's not new every day. What does Kate do? The Princess of Wales, she wears a slightly different dress and a different colour, does her hair slightly differently, but basically it's the same every day. She does the same thing. We barely hear her speak. It's all very solid. That's what the royal family is about. If you're a monarchist, it's the continuity. If you want to be a celebrity, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to do something new. You have to share a bit more. Whether it's more breast or more bum if you're a Kardashian, or if it's new outfit, you have to share more about your life. Eventually, we're going to get the birth video. We're going to get the birth video, because she's going to have nothing left to sell to us, to say, look at me, talk about me. And the worst thing about this is, Philip, I'm talking about her.
Well, exactly.
I'm ashamed of myself.
And that's why I think I'd far rather we just let them get on with what they want to do. It's not. We
can all agree that no one ever mentions them again.
Exactly.
I'd happily do that.
And they're purely celebrities now. Harry's not a working royal. Yes, he's got a title. He's got the birthright and all the rest of it. He's done good for the country.
Yep.
He's an individual that is still suffering mentally, and you can see that.
He's got PTSD.
You can see that in his eyes, 100%.
And there's someone who suffered it yourself. You recognise it.
He's been sucked into the celebrity lifestyle. So we should leave them.
Can I say they're a great response? I don't care. 11:22 is the time. I want to hear from you about stuff we should care about, and that our tax is being used to pay for free school meals for kids whose parents, I think, can afford it. Yeah, but do we want to pay for even for the kids whose parents say they can't afford it? Maybe we should sort out the fact that they can't afford it.